Before you put one more different plant into that empty spot, stop and look at the rest of the bed. The easiest way to calm a scattered flower bed is to repeat one thing that already works: a plant, a flower color, a leaf shape, or a texture. There is no need to pull everything out or draw a formal planting plan. Start with the bed you already have. Find the strongest element in it and let that element show up again. That sounds almost too simple, but it changes the next decision. Instead of asking, "What pretty plant can I fit here?" you ask, "What should appear here again?" That is the whole idea behind repetition. The rest of the video is about choosing the right thing to repeat, deciding how much will fit, and improving the bed without turning a July afternoon into an unnecessary transplanting project. Start with one photograph. Stand where you normally see the bed: the front step, the sidewalk, the driveway, or the kitchen window. Take one picture that includes the entire planting. Do not walk up and photograph every flower separately. Individual plants almost always look more impressive close up. The full bed photo shows whether they work together. Now look for the places where your eye stops. Maybe there is one red flower near the mailbox, one silver plant near the steps, one tall grass in the middle, and several unrelated mounds between them. Each plant may be healthy. The bed still feels unsettled because every shape arrives once and disappears. Repetition gives the eye something familiar to find again. The same low mound near both ends can connect the bed. A purple flower returning in 3 places can pull separate areas together. Fine foliage repeated between broad leaves can create a pattern that remains after the flowers fade. A mixed flower bed can hold many species and still feel calm. Trouble begins when every plant introduces a new color, height, or shape, and nothing comes back. Your first job is to find what has earned the right to come back. Do not automatically choose the plant that is flowering hardest today. Look for the steady performer. It returns reliably. The foliage stays useful for more than a few weeks. It holds its shape. It fits the sun and moisture in that part of the bed. It has not spent the season leaning over the walkway, swallowing its neighbor, or sending you outside with pruners every few days. The best plant to repeat is often the one you almost overlook because it quietly does its job. Suppose there is a rounded perennial near one end of the bed that stays neat after bloom. The empty spot at the other end receives the same amount of sun, drains about the same way, and has enough room for that plant at maturity. Repeating it there gives the 2 ends a clear connection. The plants do not need to touch. In many beds, separated clumps work better because the eye sees the shape, travels through the other plants, and recognizes the shape again. Before you buy the duplicate, check the full-grown width. Nursery pots make almost everything look smaller than it will be. A plant that spreads 3 feet wide does not need 5 copies squeezed into a 6-foot opening. One plant at each end may be enough. This is where the familiar advice about planting in groups of 3 or 5 can help, and where it can also cause trouble. 3 small plants can make a stronger patch than 1 small plant floating in mulch. 5 can make sense in a broad bed when the plants remain compact. Odd-numbered groups often feel less stiff than 2 plants standing like bookends. But the number has no special power. Mature size and available space decide what belongs. A large ornamental grass may create enough presence by itself. 2 generous clumps can establish a clear pattern across a small bed. A narrow strip may hold 3 compact plants and become crowded with 5. Use the number that fits after the plants mature. Grouping and repetition are also slightly different jobs. 3 matching plants placed close together read as one mass. To carry that idea through the bed, the same plant or another related element needs to appear again. That second appearance might be another small group, one larger specimen, or a different plant with similar foliage. Think in repeated shapes instead of repeated pot counts. The distance from which you usually see the bed also changes how much repetition you need. A small plant may be perfectly visible beside a patio chair and almost disappear when viewed from a second-story window. A long foundation bed may need the repeated element at several points before the connection is obvious. A short bed beside the porch may need only two. Use the photograph as a scale test. If the candidate plant is barely visible in the full bed image, one more tiny copy may not change much. A slightly larger group, a stronger foliage shape, or a repeated color patch may read more clearly. This is another reason not to copy a planting recipe by plant count. A group that works in a 10-foot bed can look weak in a 40-foot border. The right amount depends on the size of the plant, the length of the bed, and where you normally see it. Now check whether the growing conditions stay the same across the bed. This step prevents the design idea from becoming a plant care problem. The corner near the driveway may get hot afternoon sun and dry quickly. The area beside the house may receive morning light and stay damp after rain. One plant is unlikely to be equally happy in both places. When the site changes, keep the visual connection and change the species. Color is the easiest way to do that. Imagine that a purple flowering plant is thriving in the sunny half of the bed. The shaded end cannot support the same plant, but it may support a different plant that brings back a similar purple. The species changes, the color returns. The bed still feels connected. The blooms do not have to open on the same day. One plant may carry the color in spring, another in summer, and a third through tinted foliage. That is often more useful than buying several identical plants that flower together and then leave the whole bed quiet at once. For a beginner, one returning color is usually enough to create a noticeable improvement. You can still have other colors. They simply stop competing for equal attention in every open spot. Look at the house, the mulch, and the plants that are staying. Choose a color already present that works with them. Then repeat it 2 or 3 times where the growing conditions make sense. Be careful with bright accents. A single red or orange flower can be useful when the rest of the bed has a steady base. 5 different bright colors, each appearing once, pull the eye in 5 directions. The repeated color is the thread. A different accent can then feel deliberate rather than accidental. You can also repeat a color through the season without demanding non-stop bloom from one plant. Imagine the bed has a pale purple flower in spring. A summer blooming plant can bring the color back later, while dark seed heads or purple-tinged foliage carry a quieter version after that. The bed keeps a relationship between the plants, even though the display changes. The practical limit is maintenance. Do not choose 3 plants that need 3 different kinds of deadheading, staking, and watering merely to preserve one color. The repeated feature should simplify the picture without multiplying the care schedule. A restrained color plan is especially helpful in a bed that already contains several permanent plants you cannot or do not want to move. You are not trying to make every old choice match. You are adding enough connection that the unmatched plants stop controlling the entire view. Color is helpful, but foliage usually does more of the long-term work. Most perennials are not in peak bloom for the entire growing season. After the flowers finish, the bed is built from leaves, stems, and plant shape. A planting connected only by bloom color can lose that connection for much of the year. Look again at the photograph. Ignore the flowers for a moment. Do you see mostly rounded green mounds, large coarse leaves, narrow upright blades, soft fine foliage, silver leaves, dark evergreen shapes? Choose one useful foliage quality and let it return. A bed filled with broad leaves may benefit from a fine texture that appears in 2 or 3 places. A collection of small, loose plants may need a few repeated rounded mounds. Upright leaves can break up a bed where everything sits at the same low height. Familiar shapes are often more useful than unusual ones because the eye recognizes them quickly. In a sunny bed with well-drained soil, prairie dropseed is one example of a plant that can provide repeated fine texture. It forms a long-lived clump, generally around 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, and it establishes slowly. That mature width makes it more appropriate for a roomy border than a tiny strip at the edge of a walk. Treat it as an example. Your local climate, soil, and available space still decide whether it belongs. In a shaded bed where the soil stays moist but drains, Japanese forest grass can provide a soft, arching shape. The species commonly grows about 1 to 1.5 feet tall and roughly 1 to 2 feet wide. It prefers shade or partial shade and consistent moisture. Hot, dry southern conditions can be a poor match, especially when the soil dries between waterings. Those two grasses do not need to appear in the same yard. They show how the visual job can stay consistent while the plant changes. Fine, arching foliage can connect different areas only when each plant is suited to its own location. You can use the same method without naming a single new plant. If the sunny side already contains a reliable, narrow-leaved perennial, repeat that shape there. In shade, look among the plants you already own for another narrow or arching leaf that handles the site. The bed becomes more connected, and every repeated plant still has a fair chance to live. Now apply the same thinking to a walkway, but keep it simple. If the bed runs beside a path, 2 or 3 repeated clumps can carry the eye toward the door. They do not have to form a continuous row, and both sides of the path do not need to match. Mature width matters more than the pattern. Set plants far enough back that normal growth stays mostly inside the bed. A soft edge is pleasant. Wet foliage covering half the walkway is a chore. For this lesson, that is enough. A repeated element, adequate space, and a clear walking surface. At this point, you should have one candidate plant, color, leaf shape, or texture. The next question is how to use it in the bed you already own. There are 4 practical choices: keep, add, move later, and remove when there is a real reason. Start with keep. A plant does not become a mistake simply because it appears once. One tall plant can be an accent. One unusual leaf can give the bed contrast. One seasonal flower can mark a favorite time of year. Unique plants become easier to appreciate after the background has some repetition. The goal is not to erase everything interesting. It is to stop every plant from demanding equal attention. Keep healthy one-off plants that fit the site and serve a clear purpose. Next comes add. Before adding anything, check whether the apparent empty space is truly empty. Young perennials can leave broad gaps during their first season and nearly close them by the third. Spring bulbs may disappear by summer while their neighbors are still expanding. A plant cut back after bloom may look absent for a few weeks without leaving a permanent hole. Use the plant's expected mature spread, not today's outline, to judge the gap. You may find that the bed needs repetition in color or foliage farther away, while the bare patch in front of you needs time. Patience is part of the repair. Crowding new plants into every visible opening creates a different kind of randomness later, when the strongest growers begin covering the rest. Add another plant when an existing performer deserves a repeat, and the new location matches its needs. Check the light, drainage, soil moisture, and mature footprint before buying. Then purchase only the number the space can hold. This is where a simple marker can save money. Set an empty pot, a bucket, or a small stake in the proposed location. Step back to your normal viewing point and take another photo. If the repeated position connects the bed, you have useful evidence before spending anything. Leave the marker in place for a day or two. Look from the window and from the sidewalk. A position that seems perfect while you are standing in the mulch may look crowded from farther away. The third choice is move later. Many random-looking beds already contain duplicates. The plants are simply scattered in places where they do not create a visible pattern. 2 may be hidden behind taller neighbors. 3 small clumps may be spaced so evenly that each still looks isolated. Moving one plant can sometimes do more than buying 3 new ones. The word later matters, especially for a video published in late July. Hot weather is a hard time to dig up many established perennials. Moving a plant damages roots just when heat and dry soil increase water demand. Some plants tolerate summer handling better than others, and a gardener who can provide shade and careful watering has more options than someone leaving for vacation next week. There is no single transplant date for the entire United States. Many perennials are commonly moved in spring as growth begins, or in late summer and early fall after flowering. The best timing still depends on the species and the region. Some plants have their own schedule. Bearded irises are often divided after bloom in July or August. Peonies are usually handled in fall. Ornamental grasses are commonly divided in spring in colder regions. Deep taproots can make established plants difficult to move at almost any time. Identify the plant before digging. Check local extension guidance for that plant and your climate. For now, mark the future location. Take a photo. Write the plant name on the marker. Planning the move while everything is visible can be more valuable than forcing the move during the hottest week of summer. When the proper window arrives, prepare the new hole before lifting the plant. Keep exposed roots moist and shaded. Replant promptly, water thoroughly, and protect the division from drying while it establishes. A design fix is not an emergency. The plant should survive the improvement. The fourth choice is remove, and it should have a reason beyond "this plant appears once." Removal makes sense when a plant repeatedly fails in the site, blocks the path, overwhelms its neighbors, spreads beyond the space you can manage, or conflicts with the simpler pattern you have chosen. Sometimes the plant itself is fine, but it is using the only open location where the repeated element needs to go. You may be able to move it elsewhere at the proper time. In other cases, giving it away is more sensible than building the whole bed around one awkward purchase. Avoid clearing half the planting because the photograph looks busy. Work in layers. First, choose the repeated element. Then, mark where it should appear. Only after that should you decide whether an existing plant truly prevents the plan. That order keeps a small editing project from becoming a bare bed rebuild. Here's what the process might look like in an ordinary mixed bed. The bed contains several unrelated flowering plants, 1 dependable rounded perennial near the steps, and 1 fine textured plant near the far corner. The middle feels crowded, while the opposite end has an empty patch. The rounded perennial is the better repeat because it keeps a useful shape longer, and the empty area has similar light and moisture. You mark a spot for 1 more clump near the far end. The fine textured plant remains as an accent. It does not need 4 copies merely because repetition is the topic. 2 small purple flowers in the middle already share a color, so you move them closer together during their safer transplanting season. Now the bed has a repeated rounded shape, 1 controlled color group, and 1 contrasting texture. No complete redesign, no truckload of plants. 3 decisions make the existing plants easier to read. That is the advantage of using repetition as an editing tool. It reduces the number of new ideas the bed has to carry. It can also reduce indecision at the garden center. When a plant catches your eye, begin with 1 question. What useful element in my bed will this repeat? The answer could be an exact plant, a flower color, a rounded mound, an upright leaf, or a fine texture. If the new plant repeats nothing, it needs a different, clear job. It might replace a failing plant, fill a real seasonal gap, or become the single accent. It was pretty on the table is not a job. Then make 2 quick safety checks. Will the full-grown plant fit the marked space? And does that exact spot provide the light, moisture, drainage, and climate the plant needs? Those checks support the main decision. They do not replace it. The useful test is whether the purchase strengthens a pattern that is already beginning to work. Before your next trip, take that whole bed photo and circle one plant, color, leaf shape, or texture worth repeating. That circle becomes the plan. The next plant is no longer another guess. It has a place, a reason, and something in the bed waiting to meet it. Which plant in your current flower bed has performed well enough to deserve a repeat?